And a very good afternoon, good morning, depending on what time zone you're in. We're over here in the east, so it's 12 noon. Half the day is done. Some of you are just starting out on the left coast. Thank you very much for listening. We're coming to you live, and we're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio Podcasts or Spotify. We're on most of the major podcasts that you can hear us on. So we're there as well. So if you're listening there, welcome to the show. And of course, we're also on Blackjack Television back on the East Coast. And of course, we're in milehighradio.com out in Colorado. So that's the story. We have a big day today. We have one NBA game to take a close look at to see how the line movement is going and also into which direction the pros are going. That's the Nets and the Bucks, Brooklyn against Milwaukee. And we have two baseball games on tap for today as well. You got the Cubs against the Mets, and we have the Reds against the Padres. Those are the lineup for today. And then we're going to take a few minutes and talk about college football. You remember last week we looked at some college teams as far as their recruiting was concerned and how well they did, and the expectation that more than likely they will do better this coming season. So now, on the other hand, we're going to take a look at some college programs that did not do as well as far as their recruiting is concerned, and they may be on the lower side of the spectrum as we look at them throughout the season. So we'll bring you up to date on some of those. And of course, the golf tournament is going on as well. It started today. All kinds of stories coming out about that thing as well. But as usual, when we start the show, we always talk about what happened the day before. History, that's what we're looking at, what happened yesterday. And we know that you know what the scores are and things of that nature. But what we're trying to do is keep you up to date as to, some of the statistics, how the favorites are doing, how the underdogs are doing, the home teams, the road teams, things of that nature. Numbers like that can help make you a better handicapper. So let's get started. And we're looking over here at the National Hockey League. The Canadians, a plus 220, beat the Golden Knights 3-2. That evened their semifinal series at 1-1. And of course, the goal number pushed at 5. The favorites and the dogs are tied 2-2 so far in this round. The favorites, however, lead 36-31 over the entire system as far as the playoffs are concerned. The home and road teams also went 2-2 in this round as well. The home teams still lead 36-34. The unders are 2-1 in this round. The unders still lead at almost 53% when you look at the entire NFL, NHL situation as far as their playoffs are concerned. Meanwhile, in the NBA, the Clippers are plus 8.5 point underdogs, plus 310 on the money line. Upset the Jazz 119-111, and they were without Kawhi Leonard. They take a 3-2 lead in their second round of the series. The number went over the 220 number. And of course, earlier in the day, the Hawks are 7-point dogs. 2.250 on the money line, plus 250 on the money line, rallied from 26 points down to beat the 76ers 109-106. And now they take a 3-2 game lead in the series so far. The under in that game was at 224 and a half. So the two dogs came in big yesterday, the Clippers and the Hawks on both ends. The favorites now dropped down to 11-8 straight up, 9-1 against the spread. Okay, that's in this round. 41-21 straight up and 37-24 against the spread, which is just a smidgen over 60% so far overall for the entire playoffs. The home teams are 13-6 straight up, 11-7 against the spread in this round, and they're at 54% as far as the entire playoff situation is concerned. So that's the story there. The unders also, they went 11-7 in this round, but they still lead. And I guess right now they're tied actually at 30-30 with 2 pushes in the column as well. Meanwhile, in Major League Baseball, the favorites, they went 10-5. You had upsets by the Rockies, plus 180 on the money line against the Padres. The Reds, a plus 128 against the Brewers. The Phillies, a plus 135 against the Dodgers. The Red Sox, a plus 135 against the Braves. The Tigers, a plus 130 against the Royals. The favorites still lead, however, and they're at 57.8% as far as the entire season is concerned. The overs went 10-5 yesterday, and they now lead 490 to 483. They took over the lead on Tuesday. Looks like they're going to keep it for a short time anyway. So that's the story in Major League Baseball. Dogs did very well there. The NBA, Dogs dominated the 2 games on tap yesterday. National Hockey League, the Dogs won there as well. So the Dogs were out yesterday barking loud and clear in all 3 of the major sports that we're talking about. So that's the story as far as that's concerned. But so let's take another look and see what we're going to be talking about today. When we come back from our first break, and of course, again, if you've listened to the show before, you know we take 3 breaks in the show. Each one is of about a minute duration. And then we come back after we take a little sip of water, whatever, get our thoughts back together again, and we talk about what's going on in the world of sports as far as betting is concerned for today. So when we do come back, we're going to take a look at the one NBA game that's on tap for today, the Nets and the Bucks. That's the game we're going to look at, seeing which direction the line movement is going. Of course, we're also going to see which direction the pros are going as well. We're also going to have 2 baseball games to talk about. You got the Cubs against the Mets and the Reds against the Padres as well. So let's take that break, and like we said, we'll be back into the sports wagering zone right after this. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo, coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of the major podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We can go on and on. There's many of them. You know who they are. We're on just about every one of them as well. So thank you very much for listening. We totally appreciate you listening to the show. So let's get down to some business at hand. Let's look at the NBA. 1 game on tap for tonight. This is it. All the money is going to be coming in on just 1 game. It's around 8:30 Eastern time. You got the Brooklyn Nets in Milwaukee playing the Milwaukee Bucks. This is Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Nets still lead the series 3-2, and they can punch their ticket to the conference finals just by winning this game tonight. The Bucks have their backs against the wall, and they have to win tonight in order to keep their season alive. If they lose, they're out the door. Brooklyn's coming off a thrilling 114-108 victory back in Game 5. In that game, they won outright as 1-point home dogs. Now, This Game 6 line opened with Milwaukee as a 5-point home favorite. 5-point home favorite. Some shops opened even closer to 3.5. Okay, Bucks 3.5-point favorites. Now, after watching Kevin Durant's otherworldly performance in Game 5, the public is going crazy, betting, grabbing the points with the Nets. But again, as usual, we've actually seen the line move in Milwaukee's favor to being a 5.5-point dog, under 5.5-point favorite. This signals some sharp fade the trendy dog reverse line movement on the contrarian home favorite. The pros are expecting a big bounce back from the Bucks at home in this particular game. We've also seen some under money coming up as the total has dropped from 220.5 down to 220. The unders are at 58% in round 2. And remember, historically speaking, late series unders have been a smart bet in not only Game 6, but also Game 7s, as both teams are really dealing with being tired, and they know how important the game is, and the prospect of elimination is there. So they kind of rely more on their defensive game as opposed to their offensive game. The under is 4-0 in this series. Kyrie Irving remains out for this particular game, but James Harden is expected to play, and they're leading the series 3-2. The Nets are still a minus 250 favorite to advance to the next round. The Bucks, they're at a plus 195 as an underdog to win the series and go on to the next round as well. So as far as the pros are concerned, they kind of think the Bucks are going to come back in this game, because if they don't, there will be no tomorrow. They'll be getting their golf shoes out, their golf clubs, getting ready to start playing some golf, getting ready for the next season. It's going to come along. And the Brooklyn Nets, by winning, they will go on into the final round as well. And of course, as we said, as of this moment, as far as BetMGM and most of the houses are concerned, the Nets are favored as a minus 250 on the money line. The Bucks are a plus 195 as an underdog on the money line to win the series as well. So the pros on the Milwaukee Bucks, the general public on the Brooklyn Nets. The analytics go with the Milwaukee Bucks as well. So that's the story. It's the only game on tap for tonight. So there'll be a lot of money going around because there's no other NBA game to bet on. Of course, there's still baseball, and there's one hockey game that's on schedule as well. So yesterday we had 2 plays, the Hawks against the 76ers. In that particular game, the pros were on the Hawks, and of course they won the game. And then the Clippers against the Jazz. The pros had the Jazz in that game. Clippers came back, they won the game. So yesterday we had 2 plays, 1 winner and 1 loser. So as we look back throughout the entire playoff season so far, we have had 46 plays. Out of those 46 plays, we had 30 winners, which is 65.2%. 65.2% as far as a win percentage is concerned. Keeping in mind, earlier we told you that the favorites are at 60%. So the pros are just about 5 points higher, and that 5 points can make a big difference as far as the money goes. If you sit down with a paper and pencil and figure it out, you'll see that 5% difference could be very, very big, as much to figure out how much more money you would win one way or another. So that's the story with the NBA. Once again, that's the way with the Nets and the Bucks. Pros are on the Bucks, the general public on the Brooklyn Nets. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk baseball. The Chicago Cubs playing against the New York Mets, and of course the Cincinnati Reds against the San Diego Padres. Those are the 2 games. Take a close look at the line movement in those games and try to determine which direction the pros are going in them as well. Now, in order to get a hold of us, it's not very difficult. If you have any comments, you want to say, talk about the show, have any questions about anything, we're more than happy to answer any questions. If we don't know the answer, we know where to go to get it for you. So just simply drop us a line to the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. That's the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. So let's get that second break out of the way. And when we come back, we'll be talking baseball. And then we're also going to be talking some college football as well. So we'll be back right after this. And welcome back. Welcome back to the Sports Wagering Zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. Coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of the major podcast platforms as well. So we talked about basketball, just in case you just tuned in, you missed the first part of the show. The pros on the Nets and Bucks game. The pros are on the Bucks. The general public is on the Brooklyn Nets. That's how it is right there. And of course, they're also on the under in that game as well. So taking a look at Major League Baseball tonight, we have two games on tap to talk about. Around 7 o'clock, Chicago Cubs 38-30. Visiting the New York Mets at 35-25. Now, the Mets are a perfect 3-0 in this series against the Cubs so far, and they look to finish off and get that sweep tonight at Citi Field. The Cubs are going to start Kyle Hendricks. He's 8-4 this season with a 4.46 ERA. The Mets come back with their fellow veteran righty, Marcus Stroman. He's 6-4, 2.33 ERA. Now, as we look at the line in this game, it opened with the Mets a minus 125 home favorite, the Cubs a plus 115 road dog. Now, in this particular game, the public is kind of split. They don't know which way to go. The tickets are pretty even. Gambler's Fallacy says the Cubs are due for a win, and they can't possibly get swept in 4 games. Of course, that's Gambler's Fallacy. However, the pros, they're back in the red-hot Mets because we've seen the line move from minus 125 to minus 135 on the money line. Now, keep in mind, non-division home favorites like the Mets have gone 224 and 136, which is 62% so far this season. New York also has value because they're a favorite with a low total. The total in this game, 7.5. The Mets are 20-6 at home this season. That's the best home record of any team in Major League Baseball, by the way. The Cubs are just 14-20 on the road. New York is 24-13 as a favorite. Chicago, 13-18 as a dog. The pros seem to be leaning on the under in this game as well, because the total's at 7.5, with the under juice priced at minus 115 on the money line. Now, both teams have been profitable to the under so far this season. Cubs 37 and 27. Mets 31-27. So in this first game between the Cubs and the Mets in New York, it's the fourth game of the series. The general public just can't see the Cubs losing four games in a row to the Mets. So the public is generally on the Cubs. Some people are also on the Mets. They're kind of split on this game. But the pros coming in strong on the New York Mets and, of course, on the under as well. Meanwhile, around 8:40, 8:30, somewhere in that time area, Eastern time, of course, the Cincinnati Reds at 35 and 31 in San Diego, who are 38 and 32 this season. Now, these two teams, if you look at them, they're trending in completely opposite directions. The Reds are red hot. They just swept the Brewers and are now 11 and 2 over the last 13 games. Meanwhile, the Pods, they just were swept by the Rockies, and they're just 2 and 9 over their last 11 games. But in tonight's non-division series opener, the Reds come out with their veteran lefty, Wade Miley. He's 6 and 4 so far this year with a 2.92 ERA. The Padres come back with their right-hander, Joe Musgrove. He's 4 and 6 this season with a 2.50 ERA. Now, we look at the line. It opened with the Padres, a minus 160 home favorite. The Reds a plus 145 as a road dog. Now, the public looks at this and says, give the plus money with the streaking Reds. The Reds are hot. You're getting some plus money. That's the direction the general public is going. However, the line has actually moved towards San Diego. It moved from opening at 160, moving up to minus 170 on the money line. What this means is that the pros are fading the popular play and they're buying low on the Padres to get back to their ways of winning once again, get back on that trail, as they say. San Diego falls in the non-division home favorite sweet spot position. That's where you're at minus 150, minus 175. If you're somewhere in that particular area in between those two numbers, that is called a sweet spot for a non-division home favorite. Now, these teams have gone at 72.5% this season so far. San Diego is 11 and 5 against lefties this season. The Padres are plus 61 in run differential this season. The Reds are dead even at 0. Now, the total opened at a low 7, and the respected pro money seems to be hitting the over in this game, as it's gone up to 7.5 at some of the shops. The Reds are one of the best over teams in baseball this season. They're 38 and 25 to the over so far this year. So in this particular game, Cincinnati Reds, red hot. San Diego Padres, kind of on the cool side over the past 10, 11 games. Pros are on the Padres. They kind of think it's time for them to come back. The general public on the Cincinnati Reds. And, of course, this was one of the teams we talked about yesterday. If you're looking for, say, trends in which direction they happen to be going, the Reds had won 5 games in a row. They won yesterday, which gave them their 6th game that they won in a row. They beat the Brewers. So, again, if you're interested in that type of information, keep in mind what we talked about yesterday, because we said the Reds were at 5. You have the Angels against the A's. They won their game. They were at 5. They're now at 6. Pittsburgh had lost 9 games going into yesterday, lost again. Baltimore had lost 6 games going into yesterday, lost, so they're at 7. But the Pittsburgh's not playing today. Neither are the A's. Baltimore will be playing Cleveland once again. And finally, Arizona, they were at 12. They are now downward at 13. They've lost 13 straight games. They play San Francisco once again today. So if you're interested in looking at trends and which direction teams are going, these are some of the teams that are kind of in that category. We don't consider them kind of a trend until at least 6 games have been played. And generally speaking, most of those 6 games have to be played against some very good teams, because if you're beating teams that are not any good, it doesn't really mean as much as if you're beating teams that are doing very, very well. So those are the stories on that. In the meantime, the 2 games on tap for today, the Cubs against the Mets. The pros are on the favorite, the Mets, in that game. The Reds against the Padres. The pros are on the Padres in that game as well, even though Cincinnati, like we said right now, is at a 6-game winning streak at the moment. And of course, in basketball, the one game we looked at, the Brooklyn Nets against the Milwaukee Bucks. The pros are on the Bucks, the general public on the Brooklyn Nets. So that's the story. It's the roundup for the action as far as we see it, the way the pros are going on tonight's games. So there we go with that. Now we're going to take our final break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at college football, look at some teams and the way they went out and recruited this season. They didn't do as well as some of the other college teams that are out there. We're going to take a closer look at those teams, kind of give you an idea as to how they're trending as well. So let's take a break, and once again, we will be back right after this. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. Coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, and as well as on most of your major podcast platforms as well. Well, last week we took a look at the college football recruiting programs, and we looked at the ones that were expected to improve dramatically coming into this new season because of their recruiting success over many, many years. These are generally the same ones year after year. But here we kind of took a look at the recruitment rankings with some power ratings to look at teams that are headed in that opposite direction because they didn't do as well in their recruitment. So Buffalo is one of those teams. We're talking college football now, not NFL. This was one of the top teams in the country for overachieving. They take talent that they recruit and they make them players very, very successful. But as usual, that was under their old coaching staff, and Lance Leipold has moved on to Kansas. Also, the recruiting classes that had successes in these past years were more highly rated than the players currently that are on their roster. In fact, the 2018-20 recruiting classes for the Bulls were ranked number 127 in the country, meaning that they were found only 3 worse programs than theirs. That's not a good sign for a new coaching staff. It's lost its best runner in Jared Peterson. It only brings back 15 starters. That's a very low total if you're in that MAC conference. Also, there's Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers. They were one of the feel-good stories of college football last year, if you remember. But it seems the program kind of caught lightning in a bottle for that, rallying around the adversity of the 2020 season. Now, quarterback Grayson McCall had a big year, and he'll be back again this year. But Coastal no longer is going to be under the radar. The 2017-20 recruiting classes combined to be number 125 in the country. So I can't see this team overachieving that well again this coming season. Then there's Connecticut, the Huskies of Connecticut. They were one of the only 3 teams not to play a single game last fall. Did not play a game. And while returning a full coaching staff and their 15 starters does represent a kind of a stable situation, the program itself only won 9 games over the past 4 years. So the last 3 recruiting classes have really ranked about 121st in the country, which is abysmal for an AAC conference team, even one that has since left the conference. They left the American Athletic Conference. The Huskies have 3 very winnable games, and the other 9, they should be considered automatic losses. And then there's my alma mater, the University of Hawaii. I talked about Hawaii in this same spot last year when it had a new coach. They had a new quarterback and only 11 starters coming back. The Warriors also had the worst 2 recruiting classes in recent memory, back in 2019 and 2020. The Warriors proved me wrong under Coach Todd Graham, going 5-4, but their recruiting got worse this spring as Graham brought in the country's 124th ranked class. Now, these poorly rated classes are going to be the ones that they're going to be relying on in this coming season. The school is also facing some stadium trauma as well, and one of its best former players, quarterback Colt Brennan, died last spring. Things really are not looking up for the Hawaii Islanders. Meanwhile, in Houston, it wasn't a big surprise that Houston scored its best recruiting class, ranked number 36, after its 13-1 season in 2015. But the talent brought in since then has really not come even close to that level. With the 2017 ranking, the best was at number 69. They bottomed out with the 82nd and 83rd rankings, and that was the story there. So one final team to look at is Marshall. Doc Holliday's efforts in trying to recruit in the past years, he was replaced after last year's 7-3 finish, so there's some problems there. The problem was 3 losses came at the end of the season when they scored only 23 points after they were averaging 37 points per game. The crumbs he left on the recruiting trail for their new coach, Charlie Huff, is 119th ranked class, easily the program's worst program in the last 15 years. And one other school to look at is Tulsa. This is a program, their recruiting classes have been ranked worse than the year before for the past 4 seasons. So these are the teams that, because of their recruiting problems, haven't done as well. So they may not look too good this coming season. Once again, it's Tulsa, Marshall, Houston, Hawaii, Connecticut, Coastal Carolina, and Buffalo. Those are the teams we kind of expect, because of their recruiting programs, from years ago that are finally coming to fruition now are not going to be doing all that well and may not do as well as they did the season before. So we talked about the best. Now we talked about the worst. And that's kind of the story as far as college football is concerned for now. We're going to try to bring some different data into your view in the next few weeks, because before you know it, the college football season will start. The NFL season will be starting. So we got to start pointing you in that direction with some data, some statistics, some analysis about the upcoming season, try to start getting you into that program. The NBA playoffs will be over soon. National Hockey League will be done. All you'll have is some baseball. And if you're not going to be betting baseball, you got to start paying attention to what's going on in the upcoming college and NFL seasons. So that's the story as far as that's concerned. And taking a look once again at our selections as the pros go in today's games. In the NBA, the Brooklyn Nets against the Milwaukee Bucks. In that particular game, the pros are on the Bucks. The general public heavily on the Nets to wrap it all up tonight. In baseball, you got the Cubs against the Mets. The pros are on the Mets to sweep the series against the Cubs in 4 games. The Reds and the Padres, the pros are on the Padres, even though the Reds are now on a 6-game winning streak as of yesterday. So you can look at that from any one of two perspectives. You can look at it the way the pros, the way they're going, or you can say, hey, they're 6. They're at that number 6 number. That means you may want to try one more game. Hopefully they will win number 7. But as far as the pros are concerned, they like the Padres in that particular game. So that's the story for today. We got those 2 baseball games, 1 NBA game. It's Thursday. We're a couple of days away from the weekend. And of course, for most of us, for most people out there, you get the weekend off, spend some time with your family, going to watch some football, some spring football. There'll be some soccer out there to watch, also some NHL, NBA action, as well as the usual baseball as well. So anyway, have a very pleasant Thursday. And of course, if you are betting, I certainly hope you do very, very well and you have a profitable Thursday as well. So again, until tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Time, we'll be coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network right here from Charlotte, North Carolina. So until then, have a pleasant Thursday. And if you're betting, have a more profitable Thursday as well. Goodbye, everybody.